Some observers now claim that Europe's Readiness 2030 agenda is less about routine planning and more about preparing for a far larger conflict, arguing that the scale of rearmament and new flagship projects goes well beyond traditional deterrence postures. Talk of Europe preparing for the unthinkable has intensified after one of Putin's top allies publicly framed EU and NATO planning as evidence of a secret master plan. Even though official documents describe Readiness 2030 as a roadmap to close capability gaps, not a script for war. Billions in funding channeled to Kiev are seen by some critics as political cover for NATO's broader 2030 readiness push, with the ReArm Europe Readiness 2030 scheme explicitly linking support for Ukraine to a long-term build-up of European air defense, drones, artillery, and logistics. The so-called secret EU-NATO blueprint has been described in media commentary as tying together Finland and Sweden's NATO accession, deeper security ties with Ukraine and Moldova, and an eastern flank focus, although public roadmaps emphasize deterrence and integration rather than any hidden offensive timetable. Despite conspiratorial claims, there is no evidence that Defense Readiness 2030 is code for an all-out nuclear offensive. Official EU documents present it as a conventional defense and resilience program centered on projects like an Eastern Flank Watch, a drone defense initiative, an air and missile shield, and a space shield. Amid mounting tension between Russia and the West, Russia's foreign minister has weighed in with a stark warning about where the current trajectory could lead, injecting fresh urgency into debates over escalation and long-term European security. Sergey Lavrov wrote that any direct confrontation between Russia and NATO could spiral into nuclear strikes, arguing that miscalculation or uncontrolled escalation in Europe might cross thresholds that both sides have long sought to avoid. In an article titled Ukraine, Europe and Global Security, published by Politico Europe, Lavrov laid out Moscow's narrative of the conflict, framing Russia as reacting to what he calls Western overreach rather than driving the crisis. Lavrov accused Europe of pursuing geopolitical expansion into Russia's near abroad, specifically naming Ukraine and Moldova as examples of territories being pulled into Western orbit at the expense of Russian security interests. He further claimed that NATO had swallowed Finland and Sweden through its eastward expansion, portraying their accession as another step in a deliberate strategy to encircle Russia with hostile military infrastructure. Lavrov warned that Europe was rapidly preparing militarily with the explicit aim of achieving defense readiness by 2030. Suggesting that EU and NATO capability roadmaps amount to long-term planning for confrontation with Moscow. According to Russia's narrative, Europe is turning Ukraine into a striking fist for a future force, using massive arms deliveries and training to build a forward-deployed proxy capable of threatening Russian territory. Lavrov argued that European elites have invested enormous political capital in confrontation with Russia, making it harder for them to reverse course or embrace compromise without appearing to back down domestically. He said that billions of euros have been spent both on propping up Kiev and on expanding EU and NATO military budgets, portraying this dual track as evidence that the West is betting on sustained militarized pressure rather than serious de-escalation. Russia's foreign minister called for addressing what Moscow sees as the root causes of the conflict, including NATO enlargement and unresolved disputes over the rights and status of Russian-speaking populations in neighboring states. Lavrov maintained that any lasting peace would require binding security guarantees for all sides and political solutions, rather than relying solely on military balances or temporary ceasefires to stabilize the situation. In the background to this rhetorical offensive, Iran and Russia inked a new deal shortly after President Trump publicly thanked Vladimir Putin for remaining neutral on Iran, a juxtaposition that highlights how Moscow continues to deepen partnerships with US adversaries even while professing restraint. Amid their own separate wars, Russia and Iran have moved to deepen their ties through a new helicopter deal, a step that underscores how both countries are trying to strengthen strategic partnerships and secure critical capabilities despite intense international pressure. A memorandum was signed in Moscow between Iran's Red Crescent and the company Russian Helicopters, formalizing cooperation that will see new aircraft provided under the banner of humanitarian and support roles while still carrying clear strategic implications. Details of the helicopter arrangement were disclosed in a press TV report on June 17, which highlighted the scope of the deal and framed it as part of broader Russo-Iranian cooperation across aviation and emergency response sectors. On that very same day, Iran and the United States signed an interim agreement to halt active hostilities and begin negotiating a comprehensive final pact, creating a striking juxtaposition between Tehran's outreach to Washington and its simultaneous deepening of ties with Moscow. Iran's Red Crescent chief described the helicopter purchase as unprecedented for the organization, emphasizing that it marks the largest and most technologically advanced aviation upgrade in its history and reflects a major expansion of its operational reach. The agreement covers not only the aircraft themselves but also specialized equipment for firefighting, medical evacuation, and broader emergency relief, underscoring that the fleet is intended to support a wide spectrum of disaster response and humanitarian missions. Under the terms of the deal, 4 helicopters are scheduled to be delivered by March 2027, just ahead of the Iranian New Year, a timeline designed to ensure that the new assets are available before the next peak season for travel and weather-related emergencies. According to Press TV, the aircraft will be fitted with modern avionics and night vision systems that allow for safe and sustained night operations, significantly improving Iran's ability to conduct search and rescue and medical flights around the clock. Press TV also reported that the purchase is intended to strengthen logistics and aerial relief in remote or hard-to-reach areas, where rugged terrain and poor road access often slow conventional ground-based emergency responses. The outlet added that Russia has become a key partner for Iran across the energy, defense, and transport sectors, and that this helicopter deal fits into a wider pattern of strategic cooperation between the two sanctioned states. The agreement follows deepening ties between Moscow and Tehran as both countries grapple with extensive Western sanctions, prompting them to look to one another for technology, investment, and critical infrastructure support. This new aviation deal comes in the aftermath of a 40-day US-Israel war on Iran that inflicted significant damage on Iranian civilian infrastructure, creating additional urgency for Tehran to rebuild and reinforce its emergency response and relief capabilities.
$25 करोड़ गरीब गरीबी को परास्त करके बाहर निकले।
For the good of our nation, let's work together and let's truly make America great again.
The fastest news breaks.
Requested PM saying that we will have to speak to Putin and to Zelensky.
The biggest news makers.
The relationship with India is probably the most important bilateral relationship the US will have for the rest of this century.
The capital delivered quite an election result today.
Expert analysis.
The million-dollar question today is how to stop this dance of death.
Ground reports.
I'm standing at the crossroad of the Kumbh Mela. Behind me are more than 100 entry guards.
Long-form interviews.
Exclusionary politics is reflected in Manipur case as well. You don't bother because this is a small state.
Deep dive into burning issues.
It's often said DRC could be the richest country in the whole world. It's because of what sits underneath.
Why exactly did the US topple the Sheikh Hasina government?
HD videos. We don't just break news, we break it down.